Morning. Yeah. Okay, so we're coming down onto the floor and we're going to release our feet first. So actually a lot of this session's down towards the floor, so we're coming down a bit more. Okay, so coming down onto the floor, ball's disappeared. And we're going to open up the hips. So we're going to come into our right foot with the ball, spiky ball or tennis ball, both hands onto that, the ball of the foot, the inner arch of the foot. Oh, that's a bit tender. I did a lovely run yesterday up on the Polden Ridge. It's part of the Polden Way, but it's flat as a pancake right down here. And there's a couple of ridges, the Mendip Hills, and then parallel to that are the Poldens, which is where Mum and Dad live. And so I drove out onto what they call Ivythorn, near Street and Glastonbury, so it's that sort of area, and ran along the ridge, but it was beautiful. It was really lovely, but that's probably why the feet were a bit sore this morning. It was quite a long way. It's about the only hill in the area. Okay, and then into the main part of the foot, rolling around there, into the arch. We're also going to just come in, so between the heel and the ankle, so between the heel and the ankle, and probably about the length of my sock, I'm going to go up and down. So it's in line with the Achilles or your calf. And this is, in reflexology, this is associated with the hip area. So if it's sore, it might be that something around the hip area is giving you a bit of discomfort elsewhere. There was nearly a hill that was of Sheffield standards as well. Got me out of breath. From the bottom, I thought, oh, this is like being in Sheffield. We get so used to the hills, don't we? And then over the arc of the foot, so from the heel to the top of the foot. So on a diagonal, mine's got a handy line across my sock. And all the time, we're just gently pushing open this right hip as well with the right elbow. It's really useful to get that. Unlike Fran, who's got lovely, I'm looking at yours, yours is really open here, mine's like up here. You are blessed with flexible hips. Okay, let's come over onto that opposite side. So just transferring over, and again, just gently using your elbow to push into that left hip. Coming into, you can use both hands, so up and down the arch of the foot. Not so bad on that side. They all feel a little bit different, don't they? They into the ball of the foot. And you're just, again, it's just releasing soft tissue. So it's soft connective tissue, the fascia. Just getting into those feet. You get a lot of abuse. If they're anything like mine, they don't get much TLC, maybe once a week when we do Pilates. Actually, I do roll them each morning briefly, so I do actually do that. Okay, and then from the heel, between the heel and the ankle, up and down there. Noticing the difference on each side. And then from the heel to the top of the foot, so to the top on the diagonal, so below the ankle now. So below the ankle, but between the heel and the top of the foot on the diagonal. Okay. So we're going to come down into the calves. So we're going to work through the posterior chain and a bit of the spiral line as well. So into calves first, so hands behind you, just rocking forwards and backwards. And we're going to rotate the hip outwards. So we're coming into the side of the calf as well. It's not the calf anymore, but at the side of the leg here. So into the peroneal muscle, which wraps under or comes down and into the foot. So if you walk without, I mean, none of us walk perfectly. We all have our little nuances when we walk. But sometimes this muscle can be get quite uncomfortable And you can come into the calf, so rolling that hip in, rolling across the line of the calf muscle. Move the ball up a little bit more now into the belly of the calf. This is where it gets a little bit more interesting, a bit more noduly maybe, a bit more lumpy. And then up again towards the, towards the back of the knee, but not on the back of the knee. So just rocking forwards and backwards, just moving that hip in and out to just locate those areas that are a little bit more uncomfortable than anywhere else. Looking at facial expressions here. You can hear my groans, that's why you're all on mute. Okay, last bit, right up to the top of the back of the knee. So where those calf muscles come in and attach towards the back of the knee, but not on the back of the knee. There's too much going on at the back of the knee to put too much pressure on there, just with this ball. Okay, let's switch over, release those wrists. So we've been bone loading into those wrists as well, just warming them up. You could put them behind you, just in a, you can have them out to the side, you could have them in front. So you're just changing the position of the wrists as well, to just warm them up in different directions, starting underneath the base of the calf, and then rotating the hip outwards and inwards so that you're getting into the inner part and the outer part of the leg. Working up, so coming up a little bit further. Normally the Achilles area is fairly non-reactive, I guess, dependent on whether or not you've had an injury there. But further up into the belly of the calf is often where you get the interesting nodules. Just releasing that tissue. So just getting some deeper or more blood supply to it, just loosening off that fascia, that spider's web of connective tissue that interacts with all the muscles. They're learning more and more about it and its importance through our body, but also the issues that it can cause when it's not really flexible, malleable, or mobile. Cool, that's a good load of descriptive words on a Friday morning. Okay, working up. So while I've been yattering on, you've been working up towards the back of the knee. Oh, I'd obviously not found a spot where it took my breath away. A little bit more. Coming up, and obviously if there are areas that you found that are pretty uncomfortable, and they can be pretty uncomfortable, then there's your homework. Go back to them and spend a little bit more time getting into them. Okay, so we're going to come onto our side and we're going to put the ball into the side of our hip. Okay, so you'll feel the bony protrusion at the front of your hip, and then you'll get the ridge of the side bit of the pelvis, and we're just coming into the side here. Because we're lying on it, it's a little bit more intense, or potentially. So bend those knees, so stagger the knees. I've got my left foot on the floor, but my right leg is bent. I'm onto my right forearm, and I'm going to roll into the side of the buttock. So you're in soft tissue. Okay, so rolling up and down. Now, if you found a spot that is a little bit more tender than anywhere else, what I'd like you to do is just stay there, okay? So you're resting into the ball, and you're going to try and relax the muscle. Now, if you get any neural feedback down the leg, just move away from the area you're working in, just slightly. You've just caught one of the nerves coming down the leg. But there are areas where you won't get that feedback, and you're just trying to rest into it. For 5, lift up through this shoulder, so we don't want to collapse into the shoulder. We want that right shoulder to be strong and elevated. 4, 3, 2, and 1. Okay, so rolling onto your back, we're going to come into the main body of the glute. So we've just come into the side. We've got the glutes there, but we're just changing the position and coming into the glute max and a bit of the piriformis. So fall into the side of the buttock, or sorry, underneath the right buttock. I'm going to drop that knee out to the side and draw it back in. So just dropping it in and out, just checking with how that muscle structure feels. You'll bump into the side of the pelvis slightly, or the bony structure of the pelvis. Let's take that leg away, draw it back in, and then return to our upright position. So take the leg away and draw it back in. So take it out, draw it away, sliding that heel on the floor, and then returning. Okay, couple more. Last one. Good. Let's put that ball into our QL muscle. So above the ridge of the pelvis, below the rib cage, and we're going to add our pelvic tilts here. So tilting that pelvis, lifting the bum off the floor in this case, opening up those collarbones, just making inroads into that muscle structure, and then bring those feet together, knees are together, and then drop those knees over to the right hand side, keeping that ball in your gap muscle structure between your ribs and your hips, or the top of the pelvis. Should ease off a little bit. Try and draw those knees away from your rib cage, so you're increasing the space and length between your pelvis and your rib cage. And also just can make sure that that top knee is piggybacking on the bottom knee. We're not sliding it back. Good. 3 and 2 and 1. Okay, let's come under the right shoulder blade. So you're feeling the rib cage, so bottom, so middle of the rib cage, but you're at the base of the shoulder blade. So you'll have a little bit of the lats going across the bottom of there. Now this can be pretty intense. On Wednesday, I was squeaking quite a lot on this one. So we're taking the right arm up towards the ceiling. We're going to bend that right arm at the elbow, and we're going to come into our chest press. So opening and closing here. So you've got several options on this movement. You can move that ball around a little bit. So if you feel you're on the edge of something, but it's more into the rib cage than the base of the shoulder blade itself, you can move it around a little bit. But you can also alternate, so you can, with the bent elbow, go down towards your navel and overhead, or you can draw circles. So with that bent elbow, circle around in one direction, oh, there we go, and circle around in the opposite direction. So out of those 3 movements, you might find one that is a little bit more niggly than the others. So a little bit more tight, restricts your mobility. So we're just checking out, and again, you can move the body slightly, so you're just getting right into those areas that feel impinged or obstructed. Okay, couple more circles, swoops, open and close. Good, just getting that lovely mobility through the shoulder girdle on the right hand side. Good. Okay, so going to place that ball now just at the top of the shoulder blade. So at the top of the shoulder blade, between the neck, so into that, we're just above the ridge of the shoulder blade. We're just going to have a quick scan of the shoulders here, especially being Friday, if you've been at work or been at a computer. It's really nice to release off on this one. It's going to be an arm float. So that right arm is going to lengthen over the top of the head. We're keeping the elbow lengthened here, so we're not going to try and touch the floor with our fingers. We're keeping the rib cage and the hips connected. So that rib cage stays nice and stable. We want those abdominals to start kicking in. And as we float the arm overhead, I'd just like you to squeeze into the pelvic floor. So lift the pelvic floor and then release it off as the arm comes to the vertical. Lift the pelvic floor and then release. Lift the pelvic floor and then release. So I'd like you to be able to switch on, as with any other muscle in our body. It's that ability to switch on a muscle, but also turn it off. So switching on the pelvic floor and then turning it off. Because we can have too much tightness in the pelvic floor muscles. It's not just one muscle, it's a group of muscles, but they can come to a position where they don't switch off at all. And that's just as, think of the word, not detrimental maybe, as it is to have a poor pelvic floor function. Last one. Good, and release off there. Okay, coming around, I'm going to swivel around so I can see you, but we're coming onto the left hip. So into the left hip, so onto our left forearm, bend that left leg, right foot's on the floor, and then we're rolling into the left side of the hip. Got a softball on this, so it's not as bad as normal, actually. Those red, James looks like she's got a red ball there. Those red balls can be quite intense. Okay, so side of the hip, watch this shoulder. So we want to warm that shoulder up a little bit. Okay, coming into the side of that buttock, onto soft tissue, not into bone. And just hold that position. So if you found a bit that feels just a little bit more uncomfortable than the rest, but you haven't got that neural feedback down the leg, so there's no tingling down the leg at all, you're just holding it briefly there. So watch the AC joint, draw out of that shoulder, lift nice and tall, strength through that shoulder, left shoulder. 3, 2, and 1. Okay, rolling over onto our backs, into our glute max and piriformis. So feet are back to hip distance apart. We're sticking that ball into the side of the buttock. We're going to drop that left knee out to the side and draw it back in again. Sorry about that, just taking a moment. I can speak again now. Keep that pelvis nice and stable, so we're not rocking the pelvis over to the side as we try and mobilize into the hip. Those collarbones are open. We've got the shoulder blades resting onto the mat. We're trying to get some really deep movements into the diaphragm as well. Taking that nice deep inhale. Let's draw that leg away from the body now. Extend the leg away. Draw it back in. Bring the knee to the upright position. Take that knee out. Extend it away. Draw it back in into the upright position. Okay, a couple more here. Good. And then we are going to move that ball into the QL muscle. So space between our pelvis and our rib cage. Let's come into our pelvic tilt. Don't forget to breathe here. Nice deep inhale and exhale. Good. And then we're going to bring those feet together, knees are together, hands out to the side, dip over to that left-hand side, keeping the knees away from the body a little bit to make sure that you're getting loads of space into the gap between the top of the pelvis and the ribs. Moving the ball if you feel you're just on the edge of something, nudging into something that you would like to release a little bit further. 2, and 1, and then coming up to the base of that left shoulder blade. So moving the ball up, and taking that left arm up towards the ceiling. So you're right into you feel the rib cage. So there's not much depth of muscle there, so it can be quite intense. And you're bending that left elbow, open and close. So opening and closing that movement, and then down towards your navel and up overhead. So that's the second option. I'm getting a lovely feedback right through the back of my neck into my skull on this particular movement. So it can feed back up through the skull as well, or then you can add your circles and then circle back round again. So a little bit of trapezius muscles, maybe they come up at the back of the skull. We've got loads of layers of muscles here, stabilizing the shoulder, but we're also into the back of the ribs as well. So you might need to move that ball around slightly, just releasing off. And I have to say, after Wednesday, I don't know about anybody else, but mine's a lot easier than it was on Wednesday. Just if you did it every other day, it would certainly potentially help release areas of tightness. Obviously, it's no replacement for the professionals, but if you've got a ball, it does help. Okay, so circling around, making those lovely movements around that shoulder. Let's move up into the top of the shoulder now. So last bit of that spiral line here. So top of the shoulder blade, and then we're going to take that arm overhead. So floating the arm overhead, you're into the neck muscles, a little bit at the top of the neck muscles as well, or side of the neck muscles. Apologies. And we're going to add that pelvic floor. So lift the pelvic floor as you float the arm overhead, and then release it off as you bring the arm back to the vertical. So lift the pelvic floor. Make sure you're not squashing your blueberry. So as you lift the pelvic floor, that lower part of your body shouldn't be tilting, the pelvis shouldn't be tilting or squashing that blueberry. We shouldn't really feel or see any movement in the pelvic area. The movement is internal. So as we get those pelvic floor muscles to fire, let's take that breath out, firing those pelvic floor muscles, but then releasing them off. So it's just as important to be able to release them. So slow it down to your breath, 2 more. And then release off there. Cool, so posterior line and spiral line, all nicely mobilized. We're going to come into an SI joint movement as well. So just put the ball off to one side. Going to take that right leg and extend it down towards the end of the mat, and take the left leg and extend that as well. Okay, so we're just going to have our little hip hinge movement here. So your right leg is going to extend away from your body, and it will feel like you've suddenly got one leg longer than the other. So the left leg will, the left hip will feel like it's come up towards the left rib cage, and then you're going to change. So it's a little bit like if you imagine a model on a catwalk, it's that slinky movement where you they haven't got any muscles around their pelvic stabilizing around the pelvis, because they're doing that wonky walk. So we're doing it on the floor, but for a specific reason, just to loosen off around the pelvis. Okay, for 3 and 2 and 1. Okay, bringing those knees or feet back to hip distance apart. We're going to do a sciatic neural glide on that right leg. So right knee is coming in towards the chest. So we're going to give that right hip a really good hug. And we'll extend that left leg again. So we're coming to the left hip flexors here. So often when we're tight through that, the hip flexors at the front, we shorten at the front, lengthen at the back. So we're just making sure that we're nice and loose on the hip flexors on that left-hand side. Squeeze that right knee in. Take your hands behind the right thigh, keep that right knee into the thigh, and then we're going to lift and lower that foot. So we're not moving the thigh, and there's the key on this one. The thigh doesn't move off the chest. So we're going to point the foot, oh, that's a little bit harder, and then flex the foot. So alternate between a point of the foot and a flex of the ankle. Apologies. So point and flex that ankle. As you move the leg back down towards, so the calf comes back down towards the thigh. So flossing through that sciatic nerve on that right leg. 2 and 1. Okay, so bringing that right knee into tabletop, we're going to circle around here. So we're coming into, so the hands are free, okay, but we'll have actually, because it's a greater challenge, we'll have them across our chest. So we're making sure that they're not getting involved. We're going to circle that knee. So imagine you've got that big dinner plate on top of your knee, and you're circling that leg around clockwise or anti-clockwise, and then change direction. So leg still stays in tabletop, okay? So the leg is still in tabletop. The shoulders are nice and stable, and the pelvis is nice and stable. So we're getting that lovely movement through the right hip. 3, and you should feel some work going into the groin as well. 2. Space for the blueberry underneath your back, a little bit harder with that left leg extended. 2, double 2, and 1. And then give your knee a hug again. So nudge that knee in. Okay, let's come over onto the opposite side. Extend that right leg away. So releasing off that hip flexor, draw that left knee in towards the chest, give it a good deep hug. So really opening up and coming deep into that left hip. Okay, so taking those hands behind the thigh, and we're going to keep the thigh in towards the chest. We're going to come into our flossing of the sciatic nerve. So with a pointed foot and a flex foot, alternate between lifting and lowering that calf. So we want the movement through the knee. So lifting and lowering the calf down towards the thigh, up towards the ceiling, flexing and pointing that foot as we go. Good. Note the difference between the two sides. Relax those shoulders. Okay, and then we're going to bring that left knee into tabletop, hands across our chest, and draw our circle. So trace the edge of a plate around with that left knee. Now watch what happens to your right side. So it's trying to lift. Just remember we often have one sling stronger than the other. So is your right shoulder trying to lift off the floor? Is your pelvis staying nice and stable? So there's the key. If you haven't changed direction, change direction. So that circle can be as small or as big, but obviously the bigger it is, the harder it is to stabilize the pelvis. So find your position. It will be different from everybody else's. It's your position. 3, 2, and 1. And release off there. Give that leg a hug, and then extend the leg down towards the end of the mat. Okay, so we are going to come into our our back position again, and we are going to hover the right foot off the floor and extend the leg away with the leg hovered off the floor. Okay, so extend that leg away, then lift it up towards the ceiling, and then back into tabletop. Okay, lower it down so it's just hovering off the floor, extend it away, lift it up, and then back into tabletop. Lower the foot so it's just hovering off the floor, extend it away, lift it up, tabletop, lower towards the floor but not on the floor. So we haven't put the foot on the floor at all through this movement, but we are working through those abdominals. The left side is stabilizing us against this movement. Okay, and hopefully, I must admit, I've got a habit of putting my fingertips on my hips and ribs just to check that they're not moving. It also takes my hands off the floor, so I'm not relying on balance for those. 2 more. So movement through the hip, but also working into the abdominals. Make sure you're not squashing your blueberry. Last one. And lower the foot to the floor. So shake those the right leg out, give it a little wiggle, and then same on the left-hand side. So tabletop, lower the foot towards the floor, but don't touch the floor. Lengthen the leg away, lift up towards the ceiling, or tighter on that side, and then back into tabletop, lower back down the foot to the floor, but not touching the floor, lengthen away into your upright position. Go relax those shoulders, tabletop, foot towards floor, but not on the floor, lengthen that leg away. So it's a bit like a really laboured cycle movement, I guess. Sort of. Last week we were up at Lady Bower. We had a little walk up there, and there were two blokes on on penny farthings. Couldn't believe it. It was really on that old road. If they'd have hit a pothole, they'd have been in real trouble. So a couple more. Again, your pelvis is beautifully stable. We're not squashing the blueberry. Those shoulders are completely disconnected from that movement, trying to keep them down and released. Last one. Can't count. And release off there. Okay, come into your double knee hug. And circle those legs around. So hands on top of the knees, come into your breaststroke, circle, and opposite direction as well. Good. Okay, so we are going to stay on our backs into our shoulder bridge. Now we're going to come up into our shoulder bridge. I'm going to, let's have a think. Oh, let's put the TheraBand. I'm just thinking because Fran's got a band, so we're going to have the band and loop it around our thighs. So if you've got a loop, it's around your thighs. If you've got the TheraBand, you're wrapping it around your thighs. So it's onto your thighs, not your calves. So put your feet on the floor for me. and both feet are on the floor. That's it. Straight into a double tabletop. Excellent. Okay, so we're on our backs. Are you right there, Jane? So we're on our backs, yeah. And we're coming into a shoulder bridge. So we're going to squeeze into those buttocks. The TheraBand is around our thighs, wrapped into a resistance. And we're going to lower back down again. So we're just going to fire into those glutes. We've released them off, and now we want them to start working. So let's add those arms up towards the ceiling and then float them down to the side of our thighs when we lower the bum to the floor. So lift up and then lower back down. See if you can get them to work simultaneously. Keeping those shoulder blades onto the mat. I have a tendency to lift my shoulder blades off. They seem to get involved in everything. So just a gentle reminder to just check yours out as well. Make sure they're nestling into the mat, opening up those collarbones. Okay, taking those arms up, we're going to hold into that shoulder bridge and we're going to pulse the pelvis up and down. So top of hamstrings, settle those shoulder blades onto the mat. We've got a little bit of resistance into those bands as well. So those legs are working harder than normal. 5, 4, 3, and 2, and 1. And lower back down again. Okay, just come into your double knee hug. Just check there's nothing going into that lower back. And we're definitely switching on those glutes. Lower one leg, lower the second leg. So into our shoulder bridge now. Now, the arms are up towards the ceiling, shoulder blades down on the floor, and we're going to push away those legs. So we are keeping the feet on the floor. We're creating that isometric resistance. Okay, so you're going to push the feet away from your bum, but keep them on the floor. So you've got that tension there. We're into shoulder bridge. And then you're going to draw the, oh, crikey, that was a bit fast. So you might get a bit of cramp. I've just got cramp in me in the thigh. Okay, so you're going to draw those heels towards the bum in your shoulder bridge. Oh, it definitely didn't like that. That's okay. So you're pushing the feet away, so you create resistance, and then you're going to draw them in. So you're drawing them in, squeezing those buttocks. Oh, those inner thighs are really kicking in. They shouldn't be as much. Okay, they're just having a little bit of activity there. Okay, and then push away. So pushing away. So you'll feel your shoulder blades moving slightly up the mat, okay, as you push away. And then you're drawing in, creating that concertina effect between your heels and your shoulder blades. So a little bit of a concertina effect between the two. And then 2 breath cycles. And then push away. So creating that little bit of distance, but still working. You should feel a lot of activity into those leg muscles. Those buttocks need to be really active. Let's draw in towards each other, a little bit of a concertina effect there. 2 breath cycles. Last set, push away. Obviously, the harder you push it away, the more those muscles are having to activate, and then draw together. Relax those shoulders onto the mat. And then lower the bum to the floor, come into your double knee hug. Oh, my inner thighs really kicked on that. I'm seeing Jess in a week or so, I'll have to ask her about that. Okay, lower the right foot, lower the left. Okay, shake those legs out. Okay, we're coming into, we've done our psoas, that's okay. So we're coming into our, onto our fronts, okay? So onto our fronts, you might want to cushion or a towel underneath your head. You can use your hands in your triangle of your in your hands. And the band is still on our thighs, okay? So band's still on our thighs. We're going to bend both knees here. So bend both knees, and we're going to flex both feet. So we've got the band on the thighs, and we're going to lift, squeeze into that right buttock, and lift or aim to try and lift the thigh off the floor, okay? And then lower back down again. And then do the same with that left-hand side. Now, you're alternating from one side to the other, so you're going to have to do it slowly because those shoulders need to switch off, okay? So what you'll find here is that the shoulders will want to kick in, and you might find that the pelvis tilts forward, so you're pressing down through your belly button. Try and keep that movement to a minimum. So you're squeezing and releasing, so it's important that you release your muscles here as well as squeeze them. So relax those shoulders. Alternating from one side to the other. Trying to switch off those shoulders at the same time. So it's a lot harder when we alternate as opposed to just working with one side, because we have to actually mentally switch off those muscles that we don't want to be firing. Relax those toes. So you're slowing it right down here. Okay, come and bring those hands underneath the shoulders, push back up and come into your all fours position. So we've got the band around our thighs through still, the TheraBand around our thighs. We're going to draw that knee in towards the chest, and we're going to come into a little crunch, okay? So you're shortening between, when we've got that flexion there. And then we're going to extend the leg away and lengthen out, but we're not coming into extension. We want to keep that pelvis nice and neutral here, okay? So we add a little crunch, and we're just working with that right leg, and then we're extending away. So really draw the foot away, but keep the pelvis nice and level. Drawing in on the exhale, extend away on the inhale. Draw in and extend. Draw in and extend. 2 more. Draw in and extend. Last one, draw in and extend. Okay, release those wrists if you need to, shake it out, and then we're going to come into the opposite side. So into that left-hand side. Okay, so draw that left knee into your crunch. So you're shortening and flexing the upper back, and then extend away, lengthen. Draw in on the exhale. Inhale, extend. Keep those shoulders away from your neck. Drawing them back. So really getting the movement, extending that neck. When you come into your lengthened position, extend the length of the neck. Draw the shoulder blades down towards your back pockets and lengthen through that spine. Good. 2 and 1. And release off there. Good. Come into your shell stretch, making sure that your lower back is feeling comfortable. Okay, so we are going to put that band around our ankles and we're coming back onto our front. So the band is now down by our calves or ankles. Okay. So here we're going to be raising that right leg away from the left leg, okay? So we're coming more into our hamstrings. This is going to fire more into the hamstrings on this one. So we've got our neutral position, shoulders are out of it, legs are lengthened away, toes are long, and we're going to draw that right leg up and lower it back down again, lifting it up and lowering back down again. Now you will find your equilibrium, so that left leg is going to work hard to stabilise you against the resistance of that right leg pulling up towards the ceiling. So it's a lengthened leg, we're not bending the knee, we're taking it, we're hovering it off the floor and then switching it off. So through that right buttock and the right hamstring and then switch them off. As you lower them, once you've lowered them, switch them off. Lift them, squeeze and contract, lower and release. 2 more. Last one. And now we're going to hold it up there and do a little micro kick. So a little pulse. So 10, relax those shoulders. 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, and 1. And then release completely. And we're going to do a second set of those. So make sure those shoulders are released in the same way that when we work into the arms on their own, often the glutes and the hamstrings will kick in. So really try and isolate into that right leg. Micro pulse. Hover, take the resistance, and then pulse. 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, and 1. And release off there. Okay, you sugar your bum from side to side. Just loosen off those lower muscles. Make sure those shoulders are relaxed and not getting involved. And then we're going to do the same on the left leg. So we're going to lift and lower, but switching those muscles off. So hover and then release and lower. Hover, get the resistance into the band and then release and lower. Make sure that those upper back, just do a check on the shoulders, on the jaw. Make sure that they're switched off, that those hamstrings on the left-hand side and the glutes and the pelvic stabilizers are working, that we're working through those leg muscles. 2. Try not to push too deeply into the belly button and onto the mat. We want those abs connecting. And last one. And release off there. Okay, we're going to take the resistance into that left leg. We're going to pulse for 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, and 1, and release off there. Note the difference between the two sides. How do they feel? Second set, lifting that left leg off the floor, tucking that tailbone under, take the resistance, and for 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, and 1, and release off there. Okay, disengage your TheraBand. Give your legs a good wriggle from side to side. Okay, we're going to come into those arms now. So you can take your TheraBand or your loop, okay, and Fran, if you're using your loop, if you haven't got a TheraBand, you can use your loop and you can place your hands behind your back, so into the thumbs, and you're going to do your pulses from there with a little bit of resistance. You could place them around the wrist. This is if you've got a loop. If you've got a TheraBand, you are going to take the TheraBand underneath your waist, so that's going to be flat underneath your thighs here, and your resistance is going to be in the palms of the hand. So if you've got a long TheraBand, it's underneath your thighs, but if you've got a loop, it's in between your hands and your wrists. Okay, so we're going to have those hands, regardless of loop or band, we're going to have the hands behind our backs. We're hovering the chest off the floor, okay? So a little bit of elevation. We're still looking down towards the mat, so we're coming into those back extensors, and we want to make sure that tailbone's tucked under. So a little bit of activity into the abdominals. Try not to use your hamstrings to do this, okay? So tuck those toes towards each other and kick those heels out, and that should help switch off the hamstrings a little bit. You will get a little bit of activity in the buttocks, but primarily we want to be into the abs and the upper body. So head's floating off, we're looking down towards the mat, we've got resistance in the arms. Okay, we're going to draw those arms behind us, palms are facing in, and we're going to add a little pulse here. Okay, so a little flutter, just gently up and down, about 2 centimeters, 3 centimeters, not very much. Okay, let's go. So in and out. Breathing as we go. So we'll get that diaphragm firing. In for 5 and out for 5. In and out. 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 Last set. In and out. And release off there. Bring those arms round underneath your shoulders. Push back up and into your shell. So with working those upper back muscles, they obviously feel like they've been working, and when we come into our shell, it feels like a lovely long stretch. Now, just coming into that variation of shell, into those inner thighs, let's take those toes together, and the knees are going out to the side. So knees are out just as deep as you can, or maybe a little bit higher to start off with, and then allowing the bum to go towards the heels, going into that deep stretch around those inner thighs. Relax the jaw, relax the neck and shoulders, allow the stretch reflex to take over, to just allow the natural movement of or rhythm of your body to take the stretch. Take a deep breath in and deep breath out. We hold a lot of tightness around our hips. If we can strengthen them but keep them nice and mobile as well, it is a really good thing to do. Okay, so we are going to come back down onto our prone. So we're working quite a lot into our back muscles today, and we're going to come into another variation. If you've got any discomfort in your back, stick a cushion or a towel underneath your belly button. So if you are finding your lower back is starting to ache a little bit, stick a cushion or a towel underneath your belly button. Okay, so we're going to have our arms in our capital W position. We're going to float those arms off the floor, and we're also going to elevate the head off the floor, but we've still got our eyes facing down towards the mat. We're going to take those arms in front of us and just touch the fingertips, and then draw the elbows down towards the ribs. So we've got, imagine you're polishing a low shelf, so those forearms stay parallel to the mat. We've got work into our back extensors and also those neck muscles as well. So we're keeping the head off the floor and just doing this really smooth movement. If it feels too much in those legs, so just be mindful of what those hamstrings are doing. Again, if they're really trying to interfere, then put those feet together and kick the heels out. So it's a released position for those hamstrings. They do become active with the shoulders. So we're just trying to isolate the upper body from our legs. Last couple. Last one. And release off there. Take the head to the floor. Roll those shoulders, so wriggle them up and down, releasing them off. Okay, I'm going to have to just create more room here. So we're going to come into breaststroke a little bit more. And so we're hovering the breastbone off the floor. I'm going to hover the arms off the floor. And then we're going to, if you do swim, we're doing a breaststroke movement. So your arms are coming now in front of you. So we've got a longer lever here. So they're floating in front of you. Circle round, bend the elbows down to the rib cage, hands come by shoulders, and then you're reaching up again. So it is pretty much like a breaststroke movement, hence the name. Okay, but again, isolate those hamstrings. We've got a longer lever here, so we are working deeper into those back extensors, into the shoulder girdle, into those neck muscles, so a lot of work in the upper back. But for us, when we're over a computer or we shorten at the front and we get more rounded or hunched on the back, this is an excellent exercise to rebalance the muscle structure. So you might feel that you're aching a little bit into that area just below the shoulder blades. But as long as we don't want to cause any discomfort into that lower back. For 3, nice deep breaths. 2, head remains floating down towards the mat, and 1. And then take those arms under the shoulders, push back up and into your shelf stretch. Okay, so it's quite an intense movement that. It's the progression of the floats, the swimming arms that we've been doing, and swan dive as well. So it's a progression, but it is a great exercise to do. Okay, I'm going to finish off in all fours here. So we're going to just challenge our oblique sling. We've been working on this through the last couple of weeks. So we're extending that breastbone away from the mat. We're going to extend that right leg, hover the right leg off the floor, cat paw into that left arm. So cat paw here, let's hold it, lifting up the breastbone. And we're going to hold it there briefly. 5, 4, 3, 2, and 1. Okay, lower back down, extend the left leg, hover the left leg off the floor, level off that pelvis, make sure those the pelvic girdle is nice and stable, and then hover into cat paw on that right hand side. Note the difference between those two sides. So often they are very different when they try and stabilize us. For 3, lift up through this left shoulder, make sure you're not collapsing into that shoulder. 2, and 1. Bit of abdominal bracing there and release off there. Okay, coming into our downward dog. So just lengthening that posterior sling. We've been working it really hard today. Now we're just going to lengthen it off. Draw the breastbone towards those toes, deeper into that nice deep V-shaped position. Good. And then taking the feet just a little bit wider to stabilize you. You're going to come onto that left arm and see if you can touch the left toes with your right hand, and then tap back. So the first couple you might feel a little bit wobbly. If you can't make the toes, make the opposite thigh. So if you can't make the toes, come up to the opposite thigh, but you're coming into this tripod position. So keeping that pelvis absolutely stable, and that's the key. So make sure you're not counterbalancing this movement by swinging the hips from side to side. You might feel a little bit of lightness of the feet as you tap on the opposite side. But try and get those feet to gently nudge into the mat. For 3, and 2, and 1. Nice bit of blood going to the head. Back into all fours, back into your shell stretch. Reach those fingertips away. Draw those arms, so stretching under the armpits. Going to take both hands over to the right hand side, resting one hand on top of the other into our shell stretch, but with an emphasis on the left hand side. So gently nudging out through that left hand side. Deep breath in. Okay, over to the opposite side. Deep breath in, deep breath out. Okay, finishing off some little rotations here. We're going to thread the needle. So we'll thread the right hand through the gap between your left hand and your left hip. Just make sure the pelvis is still facing forwards and you're gently nudging through. So hold that position. Okay, we're not dropping the shoulder to the floor on this one. So we're going to hold that position. The hand is on the floor, so the right hand is on the floor. And we're just gently going to nudge that movement. So the right hand is just going to nudge and creep a little bit deeper. That pelvis, you'll be able to look at the pelvis to make sure it's not shifting, but the shoulder is not on the floor. So we've got that work into the left arm or left arm. Yeah, 2 and 1. And then back up, and we're going to do the same on the opposite side. So get the TheraBand out of the way, bending that right elbow, but the left shoulder is not going on the floor. The left hand is. Okay, so looking at the pelvis, just check and nudge. Just nudge through, a little bit more of a stretch here. Working into those back muscles. We've been working them hard. We're just giving them a little bit more mobility through the spine, and then back into all fours. One more time on the opposite side. So shoulders not on the floor on this one. Back of the right hand is, pelvis faces forwards. Let's get that lovely rotation. 3, pushing into it gently. 2, breathing in as we go, and 1. And then release off and change. So back of the hand, not the shoulder this time, but back of the hand. Make sure the pelvis is still facing forwards, and we nudge. Take that deep inhale and exhale. Deep inhale and exhale. Good. Release off there. Well done, everybody. I need to take my cod liver oil.